It started with the biggest pipe bomb the FBI had ever seen.
There is a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes.
It ended in a dumpster after the largest manhunt in American history.
My knees knocked so hard that I was about to answer them. That's how nervous I was.
Eric Rudolph and the rise of anger.
Domestic terrorism has been metastasizing across the country for a long time now.
True story, true crime, true consequences for us all.
American Shrapnel from award-winning journalists Becca Andrews and John Archibald, two-time winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Now available wherever you get your podcasts.
As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
Welcome to the Ducks Confidential podcast with a twist. George Reiser is out. I sent him to the bench. Okay, maybe not. You can catch George and I talking about Oregon State and Oregon on the normal episode of the Ducks Confidential podcast, which is already out. But in this one, I did kind of shove George aside a little bit because I'm hooked up with Max Ralph of PennLive.com, who covers the Penn State Nittany Lions. And we broke down this game forward and backwards, front, side, every way you could think of. And also, we came up with some predictions. I even threw out a score. I'm sticking to it. Anyway, as always, the Ducks Confidential podcast is brought to you by Travel Lane County, an organization that promotes travel and tourism in the Eugene, Cascades, and Coast region. Ducks fans can find out more at www.eugenecascadescoast.org.
Penn State fans and Oregon fans, it is whiteout week. I'm Max Ralph of PennLive.com and the Blue White Breakdown. Beside me here, we've got a special guest. We're doing a big collaboration this week. Fentress from OregonLive.com, getting a little bit of perspective from both sides of the ball here for what is going to be a number 3 versus number 6 matchup in Happy Valley this weekend. Aaron, it's the whiteout. Welcome to the show. Before we get into some specifics about this game, just what's the buzz around Oregon like for this week in the whiteout coming up?
As soon as the Oregon State game ended, the buzz was finally some real football, because Oregon's early season schedule has just been dreadful from definitely from a media perspective. Not that we matter, but fans have been, they're excited to watch their team boat race other teams. But at the same time, you're like, okay, you want some drama. You want to get to Penn State. Then you got Indiana now, which just destroyed Illinois coming up after that, after a bye. So yeah, we're finally now into the meat of the schedule, rematch of the Big Ten championship game last year. So yeah, everyone's fired up. As a matter of fact, at the game against Oregon State, we were talking about story ideas for the Civil War, and they don't call it Civil War anymore, whatever.
Right.
And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not even going to write about this game. I'm going to write about the matchup with Penn State. So I did 1,500 words looking at, where Oregon is coming in after 4 games, looking at Penn State and sort of the matchups, because I felt like fans were going to be more interested in looking ahead than looking back at a game that they were favored to win by 34, right? So, everyone's excited. Real quick, I just want to show that, I knew I was coming on in Pennsylvania, and I got some Pennsylvania-friendly things here. I got Jack Lambert, Jack Ham. I got Randall Cunningham. I got Donovan McNabb autograph back there. And then I have one of my prized possessions, Julius Erving autograph card in gold ink that I got 30 years ago. He came to Portland and did a signing. So, just want to show the Philly fans and the Pittsburgh fans, Pennsylvania fans that, I'm coming in peace. Even though football teams are 3-0, when I travel with them to the state of Pennsylvania, twice with the Seahawks. They beat the Eagles twice. And I came to Pittsburgh with the Seahawks, and they won too. So Northwest football teams 3-0 in the state of Pennsylvania when Aaron Fentress is covering them. That may move the line a little bit. I don't know, but I'm just putting it out there.
Hey, that for all the bettors, I mean, that's something to really keep in mind. The Dr. J card is something special. But Aaron, I got to say, I'm loving. I see Sweetness in the background. You got Rhino there too. The Bears Chicago representation. It's nice to have on another blue white breakdown here to be.
I saw your Cubs stuff, and I'm like,
yeah,
I know. We're like brothers from another mother, right? And this is an autographed Walter Payton helmet. This is a rare number to, I think, 500 that was autographed through his company before he passed away.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing! That's amazing. I should have worn if I knew that was happening, I should have bought a headband. And
a Sweetness headband.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk some Penn State and Oregon, because so the point you made, I mean, everybody's ready to move on as soon as the Oregon State game happened, and I think it's very much a similar situation for Penn State, because it's been those cupcake schedules. It's FIU, Nevada, Villanova, but I think there's a little bit of a different vibe around Penn State, because while they've outscored opponents 132-17, it hasn't always been pretty on the offensive side of the ball.
Right.
And a lot of that stems, Aaron, from quarterback play and some concerns. And I think that coming into this whiteout here, a lot of people want to know about the quarterbacks. And it's kind of Dante Moore has looked really good. He's completing almost 80% of his passes. He's got 11 touchdowns to 1 interception.
Yeah.
Like the numbers are eye popping, but the competition's pretty bad too. Meanwhile, Drew Aller, I think it's only 4 touchdowns to 1 interception, averaging right around 200 yards a game. The eye test is not great, but Penn State coaches will come out and tell you he's playing better than you might realize. So let's talk about the quarterbacks, Aaron. Let's start with Dante. As a first-year starter at Oregon, replacing Dylan Gabriel, who did so many good things. Is he this good, or is it kind of a product of the competition thus far?
You know, it's a fascinating discussion, really, because at UCLA, he went to UCLA as a true freshman, right? He goes to UCLA because he wants to start, didn't want to back up Bo Nix. And he starts. In his first 3 games, he's money, right? He lights up at North Carolina, Charlotte or something like that. Like I could even remember, it was Coastal Carolina, NC Central, and San Diego State. Lights them up, 7 touchdowns, 1 pick. After that, 4 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and 50% completion percentage against the Pac-12. He was dreadful, ended up getting benched, right? So last year he had a development year. This year he comes in with a completely different mindset, admits he was humbled, admits he wasn't ready, he needed time to grow, which usually is the case. It's very rare that a true freshman comes in and lights it up right away. Even Bo Nix was kind of mediocre at Auburn, didn't by his 5th year, he blossoms.
And not
at Oregon.
to interrupt you, but Penn State fans got an up close and personal look at him in the whiteout before. So, but we know all about the Bo Nix to Oregon change.
Yeah, exactly. So guys develop. So now we're in third year with this kid, and he's tearing it up. Right? He looks different, but he's facing next to 0 pass rush. Right. Mm-hmm. And the coverage is not great. So these receivers are getting open. So the bottom line is, as good as he's looked, and he has like NFL talent, the arm strength, the arm talent is just ridiculous. He resembles Caleb Williams in a lot of ways in terms of the throws he can make, and sort of, even the size and stature. He's a little bit taller, but anyway, but there's a big difference between dropping back with no pressure and hitting wide open guys, which is almost like 7-on-7, and having pressure, feeling the pocket collapsing and seeing defenders covering your dudes and just waiting for them to break open or throwing them open. And the reality is, although he's looked better, he's never come close to performing well against legitimate Power 4 competition. And this will be another chance for him to do so, but against a top 5 team on the road in a completely crazy, hostile environment against a unit that, has a great defensive coordinator who shut down Oregon last year when Oregon had Dylan Gabriel, and a team that has a bunch of players back from last year as compared to Oregon, which returned only 1 starter. So this is a huge test. This is almost like going from, you ace all your classes in the 100 levels, and then boom, your 400 level class the next day, while people are yelling at you while you're trying to take a test. Like that's almost what this is like. So it's going to be fascinating to see how he responds.
Yeah, I really. So one thing that I'm curious with him is how much has he shown from a mobility standpoint? Because early in this,
he can move.
Because early in this season so far, Penn State. I mean, the pass rush is there. Denai Dennis Sutton is when healthy, maybe the best pass rusher in the country. He's certainly up there. That's going to be a test that Dante Moore in Oregon hasn't seen yet, and you got Zane Durant to deal with as well. But, against that lower competition, Chubba Purdy of Nevada, even to some extent Kejuan Jenkins of FIU, when they were able to get out and use their legs a little bit, it tested Penn State some. And part of that is because it's a really young and inexperienced group of defensive ends behind Denai Dennis Sutton. Not quite as good when they're put into conflict in the read game, a little more suspect against the run. Is that something that Oregon will test Penn State with this weekend?
Absolutely. Moore can move. There's no doubt about that. As a matter of fact, this past week, so he only had 34 net yards rushing the first 3 games. He wasn't running that much at all because he didn't really need to. This last game, Oregon State did some decent things to in covers. They were a little bit more disciplined in covers than some of the teams they'd faced to date. And so that caused him to take off. He rushed for 53 yards on 7 carries. 1 was a sack. So I think he had 62 net. So he definitely can get loose and get moving if he needs to. He's not someone that you want rushing for 900 yards or something like that. But if you get pressure on him and no one's open, he definitely can rack up yards against you.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew Aller's a little bit similar, probably not quite as explosive of a runner, but he's gotten good at taking what's there when needed. But yeah, I think to flip the conversation to the Penn State side of things here, Aaron, and you got to look at Drew Aller in the Big Ten championship game last year, which really one of his most polarizing performances, because the first quarter and a half was pretty terrible, and then he comes back and Penn State's offense really gives him a run, and it ends up only being a 1-score game at the end. It really, that's kind of been the story for Drew Aller so far. We've seen him in a lot of situations with his back against the wall be able to go out and play loose and win games. He did it against USC. He almost came back against Oregon 2 years ago in his first year as a starter against Indiana. He threw the first interception of his career and came back and led a game-winning drive. He plays better when he's loose, and it seems like, and he said as much, James Franklin's talked about it, it seems like so far early in this season, he's been overthinking to an extent. He's been trying to play perfect. And I do think that there's room for that against the competition that they've played, because you want to get certain things done as you're going. But Drew Aller has to be better. And I do think right now, in Penn State fans' minds, and I think it's justified, maybe, the panic bells are going off just a little bit. The alarms are saying, okay, maybe he's still the same Drew Aller from 2024, which would not be a good thing, because Andy Kotelnicki's in his second year, and this is a guy who just has all the talent in the world. But Aaron, right, when you got the chance to see Drew in the Big Ten championship game last year, what stood out to you about him?
Well, actually, going into that game, I was torn on which team to pick, and I ended up picking Oregon by like a field goal or something, because it was clear that Drew was a lot better against weak competition than he was against solid Big Ten teams, right? And so I thought, Dylan Gabriel tips the scales for me, because he's been destroying everybody. Mm-hmm. And in the championship game, like you said, he struggled early, then he got hot. And that 4th down throw in the zone was insane. Like that's all-time highlight stuff, right? But he had the 2 critical interceptions, the one that was run back to the house, I think, and then the one at the end where he threw, and that was a great play, and the receiver could have made a better play on the ball. It's a 50-50 ball that, he just threw up there. And to me, like, do you take that chance in that situation? I think it was early down too. But I can't left thinking the guy's got arm talent. Like, the guy's good. He just has to put it together. My podcast partner, George Reister, who played at Oregon and played in the NFL, he is not big on Drew. Like, all summer we've been arguing about him, because I've been saying, Penn State is going to be better than Oregon this year. He's like, no, Dante Moore is going to be better than Drew Aller. I'm like, no way. Drew Aller is going to mature and grow. And then we come into the season, I keep waiting for something to pop. Now, again, I'm not studying them like the coaches are, or like even you are. But, you just look at the box score and you watch some highlights, and it's like, okay, why is he not lighting up the competition he's faced? Why doesn't he have a 3-touchdown game, or a 4-touchdown game, a 300-yard game? Just by sheer fact that you're facing very mediocre competition. Now, they have been rushing the ball very well, so that takes some opportunities away. But I can see why Penn State fans are like, okay, wait, if he's a senior, he had a lot of experience. Like, they won 2 playoff games last year, right? Barely lost to Notre Dame, but he didn't do that much in those games. I think under 200 yards in all 3, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his completion, he was right at 200 yards in most of them, and then against Notre Dame, he only completed 52% of passes, and none of them went to a wide receiver. So
so there's definitely reason for concern there. So now I'm because I came into the season penciling Penn State as a loss, and then sort of looking at the rest of the schedule, I'm thinking Iowa could be dicey for Oregon, and then we'll see how everything shapes up. And at this point now, I'm looking at USC's ranked and undefeated. I'm looking at Indiana looks amazing. So there's some other dicey games coming up. But I had this penciled in as a loss, but now I'm wondering because is Drew going to be up for the challenge? Is Drew going to be able to take advantage of an Oregon secondary and pass defense that, also hasn't really been tested? Now, they did a great job against Oregon State. Oregon State was coming in averaging 300 yards passing per game. They held them to 68 and 5 of 18 for Malik Murphy. They were blanketing receivers. They were getting pressure. But again, Oregon State's not Penn State. If Drew Aller if he can live up to his talent potential, I think they win. If he struggles and regresses back to just being mediocre, this is going to be trouble for Penn State.
Yeah, I'm completely with you. I think Drew, and particularly Penn State's passing offense, is probably really the X factor in this game. And it's really a tale of two different stories, because Drew is not on fire right now. He hasn't looked good against bad competition. Is part of that, keeping the offense simple, trying to get your new trio of transfer wide receivers involved, probably to some extent. I think they'll be able to open it up this week. But he's missed too many throws. He's made some bad reads, and it's not good enough for a senior third-year starting quarterback. The only thing that I will say, Aaron, and this is something that we'll talk about later in the pod a little bit more in depth, but, Dante Moore has to play in a whiteout, and Drew Aller's done that before. And I promise you that environment is unlike anything Dante has seen before. But Aaron, you made an allusion to the way Penn State's been running the ball so far, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the run game for both offenses, and maybe more specifically for both defenses, because Oregon seems, in the box score watching that I've done to this point, and some of the stuff that I've seen in replays and whatnot, it seems as though this lower competition has tested Oregon's run defense a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's been moments, right? Like Oregon State's touchdown drive, they gashed them a little bit. But I think I wrote something like they had 74 yards total offense in the first quarter, and then 14 in the second and 8 in the third. Like, so they shut it down after that. So there was a couple of moments. Northwestern, which, the best team they've faced, they put together some 6-minute drives, 7-minute drives. They ran the ball decently for sure. But they didn't have the, QB play to balance it out. But I did feel like in that game, more so than anything, where you saw, okay, there could be some issues here where you could be moved against. And that, for me, was the case last year. Last year, when they faced teams that didn't have the QB play, and by the way, last year was my first year really Oregon's first year in the Big Ten, right? So I'm following every game. But the QB play was so bad last year through the conference. Like, I was just amazed at how Michigan could have that bad a QB. It was like, what is going on in this conference? But so they were able to do well against the run because they weren't worried about the pass. And then I wondered in the playoffs, when the playoffs comes, why I didn't think they were going to win the national title, is that when they played a team that had balance, they were in trouble because now the team could run on you, which helps the quarterback, right? So to me, that's the game. Like, if Penn State can come out and run the football, which we know they can, a veteran offensive line, 2 great running backs, then that's going to help Drew tremendously, because then he's going to be more comfortable. He can take advantage of a very young secondary for Oregon. They did go get Dylan Thieneman from Purdue, but they got 2 young corners. One's a true freshman, one's a redshirt freshman. So then you have a chance there. So I think Oregon definitely is vulnerable until I see them stop how about a good running game, right? I don't think they faced a good one yet. Average Northwestern, and then below average the rest of the teams they played. Now, you could argue Montana State, which lives off the run, but again, that's FCS, right? So I think Penn State's going to run the ball well. And the question is, if Aller can respond and balance that out and take advantage, then Ducks are in trouble. But for sure, I think that's the key of the game. Absolutely.
I mean, defense is completely made over, just like the whole roster for Oregon this year. But when these teams met in the Big Ten championship game, Penn State put up almost 300 yards of rushing alone. It was unbelievable. And It gashed them, just wide zone after wide zone. I mean, the chemistry up front for that offensive line was really on just another level, unlike we've seen it at Penn State in a couple of years, despite Nick Singleton and Katron Allen both being here for 4 years now. And I think it hasn't quite gotten to that point yet, but Penn State slowly throughout this season, after not looking very good in the opener against Nevada on the ground, moving toward FIU, being more physical, and then against Villanova, looked like their communication was much better. They got the wide zone going a little bit, and that's such a staple of their offense, is being able to press that zone. Have, you'd like it to be Singleton because he has the big play speed and the breakaway ability, but Katron Allen just has the better vision right now. I do think that he will be more of the quote unquote featured back for Penn State against Oregon this week, just because of how well he's been playing. And if Penn State gets that wide zone going early, it really will, like you said, open things up for Drew Aller, and it'll be a huge difference maker. I had one question, Aaron. Yeah, go ahead.
Penn State returned 4 starting linemen. Was
4
right?
or 5 starting linemen. The only guy who's gone is Sal Wormley, who played right guard last year. But they actually filled his spot with a guy who started 8 games last year in Anthony Donko, because Anthony was playing right tackle until he had a season-ending injury, and they replaced him with Nolan Rucci. So now Rucci is at right tackle, Donko's at right guard, and so in a way, they almost still have 5 returning starters from last year.
So you have 5 returning starters from a team that gashed Oregon in the Big Ten title game, averaged 200 yards rushing in 3 playoff games, including a close loss to Notre Dame, right? Coming in against a team that lost 8 starters. Now, they do return 2 edges in Tatum Tuioti and Mateo Uiagalelei, who both play in the NFL. And Bryce Betcher is a fierce middle linebacker. But they were there last year when Penn State ran all over them. And they were there last year when Ohio State just destroyed them, right? So, I mean, that's edge Penn State all day long. And Oregon has talent. Clearly, they've been paying like everyone else for good talent, and they're bubbling up. Amari Washington, guys like that. Jerry Mixon at linebackers emerged. But again, I'm taking the veteran offensive line that's been there, done that in high stakes situations with 2 elite running backs over we got some young talent, but they've never, ever performed at this level, or even the guys who have been at this level, they were suspect against high-end competition like Penn State and Ohio State. So, that's the game for me. If they come out rushing and they're killing it, it's going to be game over. Because now Dante Moore has to carry the team, right, in the passing game, facing a pass rush like they've never seen this season. So, anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. If Penn State's first drive comes out and it's 7 minutes long and they put up 60 yards on the ground, it's going to set the tone in a big way. Yeah, it's going to set the tone in a big way. I have a question as somebody who's not around Oregon every day.
You're not? I haven't seen you lurking around every.
No, I know. Sometimes I make the cross-country flight for every Tuesday, but I decided not to this week. What's going on with Mekhi Hughes in that running attack? Because this is a guy who was dominant at Tulane last year, and we really expected from the other side of the Big Ten, with a big time opponent in Oregon, expected this guy to be really good at a higher level of play.
The grass isn't always greener, my friend. Right? He was the guy. 2,800 yards over 2 seasons, 20 touchdowns or something like that at Tulane.
Yeah.
And, the Ducks lose Jordan James. They still had Noah Whittington, but Noah Whittington is not he's just not a guy that you would say, okay, this is our bell cow. This is the guy who's going to carry. This is our Franco Harris, right? This is our Saquon Barkley. He's just not that type of guy. He's a complimentary back who can be extremely productive, but you give him over 200 carries, you're risking injury. He's injured right now. He's just missed the last 2 games. And they had some young guys. This is what trips me out about this day and age of football. Because I covered the Mariota era. I covered the Herbert era. I covered, back when you recruited high school kids and developed them. Now
that's a different sport era.
Yeah, as a bygone era, right? Now you recruit high school kids, and while you're developing them, you say, oh, well, here's this kid over here at a mid-major, right? Or even a lower level Power 4 school like Dylan Thieneman, who they all conference safety, who they stole from Purdue, right? I say steal. That people don't like when I say that, but you stole him. And so they go out and they bring in Mekhi Hughes, And these other kids are like, wait, why'd you even recruit me? Like Jaden Lamar. But what happened was he gets in and those young kids bubbled up and they beat him out. Jaden Lamar beat him out. So Jaden Lamar is the backup to Noah Whittington now. And Hughes is maybe 3-4 in that mix. This one game, he got 9 carries, but 7 came in the second half. I think that was Oklahoma State maybe. So yeah, it's crazy. So he's got to be thinking, I mean, I don't know what they paid him exactly, but he's got to be thinking, I torpedoed myself coming here thinking I was going to be the dude because they have guys. Did they really need me? So they've played 4 games. They won't let us talk to him. Like since camp, we haven't been able to talk to him.
Okay. Wow.
But I'm wondering if he's thinking, maybe I redshirt and transfer and restart my career somewhere else because this might be just a completely wasted year for the kid. So I wouldn't expect to see him much. I think it's going to be. I think Whittington's going to be back this week. I think it's going to be Whittington, Lamar, and De'Aaron Hill Jr. To me is the future. Like could be the future number 1 back for this team because that guy has to the house speed. So yeah, it's a wild story. And the thing is, like back in the day, I don't know how long you've been covering college football, but back in the day we could watch practice. And it was always fun to like scout guys. And then reporters would argue over who they like, and we'd have our little crushes. Oh, I like that guy's gonna be good. That guy's, and we, but now you can't watch, you can't see what's going on. And so we just assumed Hughes was going to be the guy, and then boom, he's like 3rd, 4th, 5th on the depth chart. So crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I just wondered, and because I'd seen he wasn't getting carries, he wasn't the guy right now, and so really interesting. And obviously Whittington's a guy Penn State saw last year, talented, even if not necessarily the workhorse that you expect. If they got some good change of pace there, certainly an interesting test. I am fairly confident in Penn State's run defense. Personally, I think going into the year we had a lot of questions on the defensive line. Beyond Denai Dennis Sutton and Zane Durant, I have been thoroughly impressed with the way Penn State's defensive tackles have shown some depth behind Durant. There are there's an Alonzo Ford who was here last year, did some nice things, but he's back as a 6th-year senior. And then there's a redshirt freshman in Xavier Gilliam who looks really good. Ty Blanding, a redshirt junior. Just a lot of, or maybe a redshirt sophomore, excuse me, but a lot more depth than we expected. And there's even a couple more names. I do think, though, Aaron, if Oregon is going to be able to run the ball, it's going to come on the edges because, as I alluded to earlier when talking about Dante Moore, the defensive ends are still a little bit young. They're going to see a lot of Denai Dennis Sutton and a lot of Zariah Fisher this weekend, but certainly still some youth behind there. And that brings me to my next talking point is Jim Knowles got to see Oregon twice last year. It's not too often that the defensive coordinator from a national championship winning team who is not necessarily looking to be a head coach because he's 62 years old, switches schools. And now it has happened. And Jim Knowles, who, Ohio State got beat in the first game at Autzen and, didn't look great defensively. And then they come back and do a 180 and just completely shut down Oregon in the playoff. What did Jim Knowles do last year against Oregon? How can this present some challenges this week?
Yeah. So Oregon was missing Evan Stewart. Oh my God. I covered the Blazers.
Yeah.
I've been messing that up for a while now. And I thought I'm gonna get it right today. And I got it wrong. Anyway, Evan Stewart, they lost him.
Evan Turner's a Big Ten legend either way. So
yeah. So he was drafted by Philly, top 3 pick, right?
That's true. Yeah. Phil, okay, he was Ohio State in the Big Ten and then went to the Sixers. So okay, so I'm clear, I guess. Anyway, but that hurt them a little bit, but that wasn't the problem. What they were able to, like we just talked about, shut down the run game. And last year and even this year, the Ducks don't have a back that's what I would call special. Like Bucky Irvin was pretty special. Michael James going back, Kenyon Barner, Jonathan Stewart, guys who can make the first guy miss, or if they're a bigger guy like Stewart, run that guy over and pick up extra yards and then potentially, take off for a big play. Oregon doesn't have that again, I don't believe. So they were able in the playoff game, they dominated up front. As a matter of fact, I saw your question. I went back and watched the highlight reel from that game. And they were just killing it up front. And then what that did is I put Dylan Gabriel in bad down distance situations. Was one thing we talked about earlier. If you do that with Moore, and Dylan has way more experience and Moore doesn't. But then they were able to get pressure with 4, and the coverage was lights out. When they did blitz, even in man, throw a quick slant, boom, there were 2 guys there right away. They were very disciplined in their man coverage, and they were on it. And then when they rushed 4,
Dillon wasn't finding guys open. And, if someone's open, you can't really tell without the all 22 all the time, right? But if someone's open, Dillon Gabriel, a sixth-year senior who was a Heisman candidate, is going to find them, which he did in the first game. But he couldn't find guys because guys were not open. The discipline and coverage for Ohio State was amazing. And so they did a way better job from game to game on both sides of the ball, just flipping the script. Chip Kelly, former Duck, guru, came in and just lit up. His game plan was masterful and just lit up the Ducks. And the defense, the discipline in the secondary, I would say, was the number one thing. And then that allowed four-man pass rush to get pressure on Gabriel. So if he comes in with that same thing and you have a young quarterback who's not a sixth-year senior dealing with a group of receivers he's still learning, and the run game isn't there to help them out, then Knowles can just feast all day. And that's where I worry things could really go south, especially if Penn State's got the run game going on the other side.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the secondary because I think that's where what we've seen so far for Penn State and what we kind of expect has been tested. I mean, A.J. Harris, stud corner, potential first rounder this year, has been targeted once by opponents so far this year.
He's got to be bored to tears.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's just, it's a compliment, I guess, but it's unbelievable. Right. But I think the thing that I've noticed about Jim Knowles, the thing that we keep hearing from players is just how detailed and intense he can be. He's not an overbearing voice at practices, but he's very stoic. And when he speaks, people listen. And so I think that shows this will be a disciplined unit for Penn State this weekend. They've had a couple of communication issues early in the season, but I think they kind of got that ironed out against Villanova this past week. That was a big deal to see that. Honestly, it was something I was kind of consciously trying to watch for to make sure that their subs were clean and everything by that nature. Did a lot there. Now, whiteout, different story. Not going to be able to hear the green dot very well. It's going to happen. Might have to signal. But I do think the fact that you mentioned the discipline in the secondary is a good sign for Penn State fans for this weekend, because that's entirely what we've seen so far and kind of what we expect from this secondary that has a lot of depth, but just hasn't really been tested to this point. Aaron, you mentioned the pass rush. What's this Oregon offensive line looking like this year? I mean, not to deviate too much from the script we brought in coming today, but I know, for example, a guy Penn State was actually supposed to play on the schedule, Isaiah Worlds, against Nevada. What does this group look like? It's completely different.
Yeah, they only returned one starter on offense, and that was the center. They call him Poncho, and then they brought in four transfers. Now they're all big, huge dudes who, some of them in their sixth year, last of the remaining pandemic year guys. And they've been good. I mean, but again, it's good against whom, right? It's so, and the run game has been solid. The only hiccup, there was a couple moments in Northwestern, and then they did have to punt twice against Oregon State, but they ended up faking one of them. So, so I think it's definitely a good offensive line. I just don't buy piecing together a bunch of dudes and throwing them together and then boom, I got a line. Because that chemistry matters. It does. You build that chemistry over time, not over, one summer or one spring. And so, I think they're going to be susceptible against good defenses. And so I think, I think they'll be good, but I do think there's going to be communication issues at times. There's going to be some loss of technique because you're dealing with a different kind of beast in front of you than what you've seen so far. And these guys have seen high-end dudes. Like they've played at, big time places or played against big time teams before. And they're vets, right? But when you have them been working together against that level of competition, and then also boom, Penn State on the road, it's just a different animal. And so I think over time they're going to get better as we work through the Big Ten, and maybe by the end of the season they'll become a completely cohesive unit. But right now I think they're good, but not necessarily great, and they've been good while playing against the competition. So I do have concerns there.
Yeah, I think that's very valid. We've heard kind of the same things at Penn State with, as I mentioned, run game was not good in week one. It's kind of progressively gotten a little better. Just to co-sign what you said, chemistry really matters up front. It's not something you think about too much because it's like every guy kind of has their own assignment every play. The communication is very key. And I do think, with the way Jim Knowles runs this defense, there's a lot of disguise, a lot of unusual blitz packages. You'll see Denai Dennis Sutton and, if it's Zariah Fisher, the other defensive end, they might both be lined up on the same end of the line of scrimmage at the same time. So a lot of communication that's going to have to happen this weekend, and do so in an environment, Aaron, that, kind of brings us to our last point here, an environment that Oregon maybe hasn't seen before, especially Dante Moore.
These kids,
certainly has not seen before. So I know it's early in the week, but have you heard a little bit from coaches, players about what they expect from this environment this weekend, and just what are your thoughts on playing in a whiteout?
Yeah. So in the post-game press conference after the game, a lot of people were asking, about the Penn State game, because now we can finally look ahead. We've been looking ahead all summer, right? They have to be, day by day, right? Be focused on the next day, which I was like, okay, you may be mostly focused, but there's no way you're not thinking about Penn State. But no, they're excited. Like, to a man who talked the other day, Dante Moore, Bryce Betcher, especially the main two, they're excited and they're looking forward to it. Those are two competitive guys who, want to get after it. Bryce has been there, done that. Dante Moore hasn't, and Dante Moore has the most on his shoulders, right? So he may be excited for it, but I'm sure he's thinking, oh my God, like this is going to be a completely different situation for him. Lanning says they're excited to get to it. They flipped the switch as soon as the Oregon State game ended. So I think, if you're a competitor, even though it's going to be tough, you got to live for this. I can't remember I think Dante Moore said, this is what we dream about. This is what, as a kid, you dream about, is playing in a game like this, even in a hostile environment just like this. So I think they're pumped for it. I think they're excited for it, especially given the games they've played. Like, they love football. They're excited to play football, but the difference as a player between, okay, we're going to beat this team by 30 versus we could lose this game by 20, right? So I think they're going to be pumped for it, but again, I just don't know if this group as a whole, with that many new faces starting together, are truly ready for something like this. I would be amazed if they go in there and there aren't tons of penalties in the first half, which they've cleaned up a lot, and a lot of miscues, because they just have to get acclimated to the environment, and that could cause them to fall behind early.
Yeah, it's a great point, and one that I was going to make too, because I'm sure you've seen the 2019 clip of Michigan calling a timeout before the game even starts.
Forgot about that.
We're in a new press box at Beaver Stadium, so I've seen the whiteout at night. Multiple times. It's been at night. I think for the past 4 years, it hasn't always been against the biggest opponent. Auburn was a good one in 2021, but I've seen the whiteout at night. The atmosphere is unbelievable. One thing that I would have warned you about last season before they tore the press box down, Aaron, is it shook like unbelievably. You're sitting there and you're like, oh my God, this thing's going to come down tonight.
Right.
Yeah, like genuinely, it could be even like during the most tame moments of the whiteout, and it's shaking, and you're like, I'm a little bit scared for my life right now. That press box has been blown down for the Beaver Stadium renovation. We're on the other side. I'm kind of doubting that it's going to shake as much, because we're on the suite level. It's a little sturdier. But the one thing that we do get in this new press box, Aaron, that I've been excited to get to the whiteout for, is we've actually got some tall windows that they have kept open. So we've kind of heard the environment a little bit better than we did before. It was always a little bit muffled in the old place.
Okay.
If it's even like, for as loud as it was against Villanova last week, an FCS opponent played in an early afternoon game, I can't imagine what it's going to be like for Dante Moore to handle this. I think, my colleague Bob Flounders just put a story up on PennLive this morning about like the highest attended crowds in Beaver Stadium history. I would not be surprised if this game tops that. There's not a lot. There has not been anticipation like this for a Penn State team in a long time. You may go back to 2017 for the James Franklin era. Beyond that, it's probably 1997. It's just, people are really excited. They know what this team can do. I think the whiteout is going to be in its absolute best form this weekend. And I think when you have a quarterback who's new to the team, new to starting, with a bunch of offensive linemen who are new to each other, this could get dicey for a minute. It's just the truth. I mean, teams that come in, no matter who you are, struggle at Penn State. It's Ohio State. They've beaten Penn State, 10 out of the last 11 years, and still have issues during, a Beaver Stadium crowd during the whiteout. It's a real thing. And I do think to some extent, you almost have to give an extra 3 to 6 points on your favorite spread in favor of Penn State. And I think that as you've alluded to, as you've spoken about some things here today, I think that will really make a difference for Oregon, considering the inexperience on offense.
I'm looking forward to it. I've been to a lot of places. I've never been to Penn State. So when I found out it was a whiteout game, I was pretty excited. So you got me pumped. But I definitely will bring my noise cancellation headphones to get through the game if it's going to be that crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you will get the perk of it being a night game, and even though the weather's still pretty good, at night it's going to get a little chilly. So I don't think the windows will be open all night. So the noise will get knocked down a little bit at some point, but definitely enjoy it when you're there, because there are a few things like it. It's gonna be rowdy, and with it finally being a night game for the biggest game of the year, the tailgating is just going to be off the charts. Not that we're partaking, but the atmosphere is really going to be incredible, and I'm excited as well to get your take on it when we're able to catch up in the press box this weekend. But look, I think even though I don't know if I'm fully ready to put my stamp on this, I think we'd be remiss if we ended our crossover podcast here, Aaron, without making a prediction for the weekend.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Penn State. I see no reason really. And one of the cool things about college sports, right, is that you get turnover, you get your stars move on, and the young kids come up, and you sort of wait for them to blossom, right? That's one of the cool things about it. And so, Dante Moore, what is he going to be? For all we know, 6 weeks from now, he's got 34 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions, and he lit up Penn State. And we're like, yeah, of course he did, because look at him. But right now, we just don't know, because he's never faced anything like this or succeeded even against Power 4 teams other than Oklahoma State, which right now is basically an FCS program. So I just have to go with what's in front of me, and that's a really good offensive line that went through the playoffs last year, averaging 200 yards per game, with 2 future NFL running backs who are special backs, a veteran quarterback who, he's up and down and stuff, but still he's a veteran quarterback at home in a completely insane environment against a team that had to replace 18 starters. I don't care what they're getting paid. I don't care what their 4-star rankings, 5-star rankings, whatever. It's tough. It's just tough. And even last year when he had all those veteran guys, Penn State, what'd you say, rush for 300 yards on it? So to me, everything stacks up to, unless Dante Moore comes of age in this game and it's like, oh my God, this guy's going pro. He's a Heisman candidate because of what he did at Penn State. I think Oregon loses. I just can't see them being able to withstand what's coming unless Dante throws for 360 and 5 touchdowns, because it's just going to be too much for them in this game. And the thing is, though, it's going to be fine because they're going to learn from it. It's going to be the learning experience they need to grow. And then maybe they meet again down the road, right? And then maybe they win the rematch at a neutral site or whatever. But this situation right now, I'm all Penn State by 10 even. I think it could be 30-20, something like that.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I think you're right. It might take a Heisman moment, quote unquote, for Dante Moore to get this done this weekend. I will say, coming into the season, and Johnny McGonigal, who I do a podcast with every Thursday, we're both kind of like, I think Penn State might blow Oregon out in the whiteout, in the preseason, because of just how much turnover Oregon had. We had no idea what Dante Moore was going to be, and we thought Penn State was going to be a lot more put together than they appear to be at this point. So I'm backing off of that a little bit. I'm very intrigued by this matchup. I think Drew Aller has to protect the ball, not make the big mistake, and he should be capable of that because the run game should carry him through. I still like Penn State to win. I'll mull over the score throughout the rest of this week. We'll get our predictions on Thursday as always, but I do still think I like Penn State, but I certainly think it will be closer than I did, a month ago. And I also certainly have in the back of my mind, Penn State actually might lose this game a lot more than I did a month ago. I think it's going to be fun. I think these are both 2 good teams. As you said, even if Oregon comes away with the loss here, even if Penn State comes away with a loss here, they both, I think, get aided by the fact that Indiana demolished Illinois. Both teams play Indiana later this season if they can get wins there. Playoffs are still on the table for both of these teams. Right. It's going to be a lot of fun. Great early season test for both. And I'm curious, but I think you and I are on the same page. I think I like Penn State right now. And I just got to say, it's been a blast to be able to collaborate here with you, Aaron. And
Definitely.
Really good to learn a little bit more about the Ducks, who we haven't seen since December of last year.
Yeah, definitely. I learned a lot from you today about Penn State, which will help me in my future podcasts and that TV show I do. So I appreciate it. But yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I've been to Nebraska, Oklahoma, Ohio State, a few other big places, clearly NFL and, of course, NBA. But this is like, when you make a list of places you'd like to go, this is one of those places. And the fact that it's a whiteout game and basically top 5 teams, it's going to be special.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the collab. You listen into the Blue White Breakdown, or you're on Ducks Confidential, correct? That's the name of your show. Make sure you're subscribing to PennLive.com and OregonLive.com. Aaron, thanks for being here. It's been a lot of fun. And Penn State, Oregon, coming this weekend. Thanks for having me. And then what are you going to do if the Cubs play the Phillies in the playoffs with all that Cubs stuff back there? Are you safe? Do I need to send security for you or something? It's been it's usually tough when they meet even in the regular season. I get a lot of jabs because I went to school at Penn State as well. So all my friends are Phillies fans. So it's a lot of trash talk. I got to be honest. Well, I like the representation back there. We're connected forever. Good job. Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. Yep, I went there, Ducks fans. I got Penn State winning this game. It's not going to be easy necessarily, but I do think there's too many obstacles for the Ducks to overcome in this game, and Penn State will leave victorious. Check out my podcast with George later this week, where we will take a deep dive into this matchup. He definitely disagrees with me. You might be shocked by his game prediction. We will certainly clash on this, as we usually do. Be sure to check it out. But this episode of the Ducks Confidential Podcast is brought to you by Travel Lane County, an organization that promotes travel and tourism in the Eugene, Cascades, and Coast region. Ducks fans can learn more at www.eugenecascadescoast.org.
Doug. Limu and I always tell you to customize your car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. But now, we want you to feel it. Cue the emu music, Limu. Save yourself money today. Increase your wealth. Customize and save, we say. That may have been too much feeling.
Only pay for what you need at LibertyMutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.